It's awesome seeing everybody here. As Kelly mentioned, we did the first one of these 4 years ago. Never would have imagined that it would evolve into such an exciting event as this, and I know it's a sacrifice to take time out of your day to be with us, and I very much appreciate it. Today I want to talk to you about connectedness. And although it may not seem like the most digitally relevant topic on the surface, fundamentally, foundationally, I really believe that it's the cornerstone to us finding the success and the fulfillment that we're looking for in this rapidly changing digital world. I'd like to start with a little story. So about 6 months ago, I was given the opportunity to become the St Ives Group's first chief digital officer. St Ives is the parent company of Solstice. And it was a great opportunity for me because it would allow me to continue to serve Solstice as well as serve 11 other businesses in the group, fantastic businesses. And so I was very excited about it, but it meant that my family and I would be moving to London. And we would essentially have to set up our lives again. And when I say set up our lives, I mean everything. Healthcare, bank accounts, credit cards, mobile phones, utilities, insurance, streaming services, ride shares, food delivery, groceries. I mean, think about all the different services that you have in your life. But I thought, you know what? This is good. This is going to give me a chance to go through the customer journey for a bunch of different companies on the other side of the world. And I can kind of learn some new things. So I made a promise to myself. I said, okay, I am going to make a commitment that I'm going to try to do everything digitally. No interaction with the physical world. No humans. No talking to any people. How do you think that went? You know, it's kind of crazy to me that in 2018, how fragmented the customer journey still is across industries. Everything seemed to be a little bit more difficult than it needed to be. Yes. And I really wasn't able to complete many journeys across the board in the digital channels. So I was experiencing some frustration, but the most disappointing experience I had was with Barclays. And I don't mean to pick on them, because they're not the only ones with this issue, but they're pretty illustrative. So I needed to set up a checking account, and I wanted to set up something with an international bank so it'd be easy for me to bank in both countries, from what I thought. So I was pretty committed. Barclays was on my short list. And so I went to their website, and the first thing I was presented with was a request to use my location, which I thought was kind of strange. But I'm not an overly privacy-conscious hound, whatever. I said, okay, that's fine. Didn't really seem to do anything with the experience, but... and then I was presented with 9 different options for checking accounts, or current accounts as they call them over there, 9 different options. I'm like, okay, I picked one that seemed to make sense. And then I was put through a process where I filled out a 6-page application form with over 50 different fields, and I got to the end of it, and I hit submit, and I was presented with a message that said, okay, we'll get back to you. Like, okay. But a couple seconds later, I hear the ding of my email box, and I excitedly went over into my Microsoft Outlook application, and it was from them. And it said, we need you to make a branch appointment. So go ahead and go to the branch finder and find a branch location that's close to you. And I'm like, didn't you get my location? And give them a call and and schedule an appointment during business hours. Okay, so I went and made the appointment, and I went in, and I won't bore you with all the details, but to be honest, it wasn't a great customer experience. There was a lot of paper, a lot of filling out the same information that I submitted online. And then they said, okay, your account's going to be ready in a couple weeks. And it was. A couple weeks later, I got a package in the mail, and it contained the information about my account and this authentication device for helping me log into the website, which looks like a calculator that I used to use in elementary school in the 80s. And I could go on about some of the frustrations I had with Barclays, and I really don't mean to pick on them, but I can because I know if they really wanted to fix it, they could. But on the flip side, I had this, as I was getting acclimated into the environment in London, and I started taking the tube and kind of feeling cool taking the tube and everything. And I would see people pull out these fascinating orange-colored cards as they were paying for their tube rides, because everything is contactless there. They would just kind of tap their card and go through the turnstile for the tube. And I was just, I would just keep seeing these cards, and I was just curious what they were. And one day I was out to lunch with one of my colleagues, and I saw him pull out one of these to pay the bill, and I grabbed his arm, and I go, "What is that?" He said, "It's Monzo." Like, what's a Monzo? It's a digital bank targeted to millennials, I guess. It's a great app. You should download it. Check it out. So I'm not a millennial. I'm a Gen Xer. Any Gen Xers in the house? Forgotten generation? Come on, let's hear it. Gen Xers, that's right. We're here. But I was going to get me one of those orange cards. So I downloaded the app, and it asked me for a few pieces of information, 7 pieces of information, actually. And then it sent me through the following identification process in lieu of me going into a bank branch, where I had to scan a picture of my passport and record a 5-second video of me saying, "My name is Jay Schwan, and I want a Monzo card." I'm serious. That's what they have me say. And so I did that, and in 20 seconds, I had a new account. And 2 days later, I got me one of those orange cards. So who do you think is Monzo's biggest fan right now? This guy. I love Monzo. I love it. And everything about the experience has been fantastic. They have these cool budgeting tools where you can kind of put things into these little sub-accounts or buckets that you create. They've got this persistent chat for customer service that's really slick and easy. And even their notifications are cool. The first notification I got from Monzo was when my family and I spent a weekend in France. And as soon as we came back to UK soil, I got a notification saying, "Welcome home. Here's a summary of the charges that you incurred while you were away." I'm like, yeah, so simple, but really, really good. I love Monzo, and I told everyone that I can about them that'll listen. Barclays was founded in 1690. They have a market cap of over $34 billion and 85,000 employees. Monzo was founded in 2015. In less than 3 years, they've amassed over 740,000 customers. They have 240 employees. What the hell's going on? I think that the fundamental problem is silos. Most enterprise organizations are siloed across the different parts of the customer journey. And this is leading to this disconnected customer experience. Is if you peek inside most large enterprises, you'll find the acquisitions team, the content team, the e-commerce team, the digital product team, the customer service team. Sometimes these teams sit on different floors. Sometimes they sit in different parts of the world. How many of you have seen this? And it's not that it doesn't make sense to organize around these specializations, but the problem is that they rarely talk to each other. Most of them have these reductionist, hierarchical organizational models that preclude them from collaborating, and they're provided little incentive to do so. I'm sure you guys have been in the meeting. Oh, we're going to have to go talk to customer service about that one. Probably have to get on their docket. Maybe we'll get something in for the spring release. How many of you have been in that meeting? This makes it incredibly difficult for brands to capitalize on their digital investments. I guarantee you Monzo does not have this problem. And I guarantee you that Barclays is spending a considerable amount more on digital than Monzo is. But these hierarchical or these disconnected customer experiences are leading to higher media spend, lower conversion rates, lower customer retention, and ultimately lower customer lifetime value. The hierarchical silos are hurting the brand's potential to get a return on their digital investments, and at the end of the day, it's the customer that's losing. But what's interesting is, as a digital service provider, we are not immune to this issue. When I took this job and I looked at our digital portfolio here at St Ives, we had a search agency, a communications agency, a web design and build agency, an e-commerce agency, a product development agency, a CRM agency. Our agency's capabilities almost mapped exactly directly to the silos that exist within the enterprise, because that's who's buying our services. And in my opinion, this is simply exacerbating the experience problem, because guess what? Agencies aren't good about talking to each other either. Whose problem is this to solve? The enterprise or the digital service provider? Frankly, it's both. I mean, the enterprise has to figure it out. Otherwise, the startups are going to continue to chip away at their core business. And you can't just say, well, once they reach scale, we'll just buy them, because eventually they're going to stop selling. And as digital service providers, we're supposed to be the experts. So I do think it's our job to set an example. But I don't think cramming a bunch of these specialist agencies together into a reductionist hierarchical organizational model is the answer. We've seen the consulting firms try to do it. They buy these specialists, they jam them in, retention bonus runs out, they're gone. Specialists like to work for specialist agencies. They like to be around their own tribe. I also don't think the model's throwing a bunch of agencies into a bucket and giving them a shared revenue goal to go after together. Or creating sub-holding companies inside of holding companies. I don't even know what that means. I think there's a better way. I think there's a better way that applies to both the enterprise and the service providers. But it means that in this non-linear world that we live in, we have to start thinking about organizational models and their intended purpose differently. We have to acknowledge that these rigid models that were put in place during the industrial age have run their course, and the future of work is much more organic. It's much more fluid. I think there's a new organizational model that allows specialists to live within specialist tribes with the autonomy necessary to continue to advance their specialism, their capabilities, but also be part of an ecological system that has responsibility for the entirety of the customer journey, from acquisition through servicing. We're piloting this concept right now, and we're calling it the connective. It allows acquisition, communications, experience experts to thrive in their own environments while complementing them with a red thread of connective intelligence, a shared consciousness about the customer journey, made up of data scientists, strategists, and creative. And this model applies within an enterprise and a service provider working inside of it as well. But with this model, when an initiative or a project is identified, a team made up of these connectives and these specialists across the system is mobilized. And this team structures itself to tackle the specific problem at hand, not just owning the delivery of the solution, but the actual business outcome that's being sought after. So while this organizational structure is fluid, the project structure is very well defined, as is the methodology. So this leads to we guarantee the right mix of autonomy and accountability. In actuality, it doesn't look quite as clean as a fidget spinner. It looks more like this. And I won't bore you with all the details, but we have been testing elements of the connective model over the past 6 months within our own group, so thousands of individuals, and the results are amazing. We've had hundreds of specialists across the group from 4 different continents and 11 different companies organically coming together to work on real things. Everything from a new methodology to a new brand, new demand models, new financial KPIs, culture, talent, and more. And it's been awesome to watch. And the one thing that I've learned through this process, and in order for this to work, there has to be a shared belief in the value of connectedness. And putting organizational models aside, I think that is what's missing in our industry. And whether we're working within our own enterprise or as a service provider working within someone else's, I think this is something we can all start doing a better job of today. Connectedness is a gift. In many ways, it's what defines us as human beings. It cannot be faked. It cannot be automated. There's a professor at Harvard University named Schwan. In his whole career, he has spent studying human happiness. And out of all of the things that he's studied, all the things that we think make us happy, from the weather to where we live, to health, to wealth, what do you think the one thing he found is that is the primary indicator of human happiness? the number of meaningful social connections. The strength and number of meaningful connections. There's a guy named Howard Friedman that commissioned something called the longevity study. It was an 80-year study to determine what were the factors that led to human life expectancy. And out of all the things that they looked at, genetics, regions, diet, exercise, alcohol consumption, what do you think the primary factor was in determining life expectancy? Statistically, the strength and number of meaningful connections. The strength and number of meaningful connections. We crave connectedness. We need it. And the very thing that we crave as human beings is the very thing that's holding us back from realizing the potential that digital is bringing. My proposal to you is that ends today. That we have, as a community, have one another's permission to put ego aside, to reach into fiefdoms, to facilitate across the aisle interactions, and stop working for ourselves and start working for the greater good. To realize that the whole of the customer experience must be greater than the sum of its parts. But I understand that connectedness also takes courage. Courage to stand up and challenge organizational models. Courage to stand up and challenge cultural norms. But I think that's why we're all here. I think that's why we chose this industry, or why we were chosen. A couple months ago, I was watching The Greatest Showman with my kids. How many of you have seen that movie? It's a really good movie. It's a musical, actually, but I'm not a huge musical fan, but man, it's about P.T. Barnum and how he created the circus. And there's this great scene where the oddities, like the bearded lady and the world's tallest man, the oddities are trying to get into a party that P.T. was at. And he shuts the door on them and says, if people see you in public, why would they pay admission? And they start to sing this fantastic song. And it's about the oddities breaking down the silos and claiming their place, their right to come out of the shadows and redefine their place in the organization, redefine their place in the world. And there's this great lyric that goes, "We are bursting through the barricades and reaching for the sun. We are warriors." Yeah, that's what we become. And don't worry, I'm not going to sing it for you. But we do have some friends who can.
I'm not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send a fire, gonna drown them out. cut me down. I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown them out. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me.
Look out, 'cause here I come.
Look out now, 'cause here I come.
And I'm marching on to the beat I drum.
Marching on,
The beat
marching
I
on.
drum. I make no apologies. This is me. Whenever the words wanna cut me down, I send a flood to drown them out. Oh, this is you.
These kids have set the stage for our transformation journey this afternoon. Let's work together to set the stage for their careers. Thank you.